But as we're running a little behind, I'll stop there, and I'd like to just turn over for the introductions to my old colleague Tariq Akmal, who is the Chair of the Department of Teaching and Learning in the College of Education. Thanks,
Richard. I am pleased to see so many people here today, so many people interested in educational issues and policy. This is great. I'm pleased to introduce Randy Dorn. He is the current superintendent of the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction here in Washington. He was elected to office in 2008 and subsequently re-elected in 2012. So he is now outgoing at this time, and I'm sure he'll have a few words to say about that as well. He's a lifelong resident of Washington State. He's been an elementary and middle school teacher, a school principal, and legislator. Perhaps the longest other job that he had besides being superintendent and educator was to be the director of Public School Employees of Washington, which is the second largest educational employees organization in Washington State. In his time as state superintendent, he has replaced the existing state assessment system with one that's shorter, one that's a little bit more user-friendly. He's argued successfully against cuts to education. He has expanded early learning opportunities for all students and championed an updated teacher and principal assessment and evaluation system. He's also established partnerships with major businesses, including Microsoft and Boeing, designed to help students gain real-world skills that they can apply to the job market and to the classroom as well. Superintendent Dorn and his wife Kay live in Edenville, and they have 3 grown sons, and so he has experienced education both as an educator and as a parent. And I'm pleased to welcome him today and to introduce him. Would you please join me in welcoming Superintendent Dorn?
So did anybody tell you to clap your hands? Did anybody tell you to clap faster? You can say no. This isn't a trick question. I'm trying to show you what my job really is. I don't get to tell anybody to do anything. The legislature can tell me and pass laws and can tell school districts and superintendents to do certain things when they pass a law. But as superintendent, I'm only the one that looks at the laws and have to uphold. What laws do I have to uphold? Some of them, most of them, the ones I like? No, I take an oath of office, and it says I'm going to uphold all laws and the Constitution of the state of Washington and of the United States. So I don't get to pick the laws that I want to uphold. I don't get to pick. I have to, put out those laws and have to, sometimes people would say, enforce some of those laws. Okay? But what I have is this right here. See, because I'm the state superintendent, you didn't start clapping because Randy Dorn got up here and started clapping. But I was introduced as the superintendent of the state of Washington, elected by over 2 million voters. Got more votes than anybody else the last time I was elected. Got more votes than the governor. I also want you to know there was nobody else on the ballot other than me for my position. But I did beat 4 other people with 50% of the vote in the primary, so that meant I got to go on my own. But what I want to know is what I want you to know is when I say I have this, it's the bully pulpit. I have the ability to try to influence people, citizens of the state of Washington, to do the right thing for kids. Now that doesn't mean that everybody agrees with me. And in fact, in a democracy, the hope is not everybody agrees with me and we have a discussion. We come out with a better decision in the end when we have both sides kind of having a discussion. So let me give you an example of something that I probably wasn't really aligned with. But once the law passes, I have to ensure that the law is carried through. For example, I could take the example of charter schools. Charter schools was an initiative twice, got turned down by the voters, and on the third time, after $10 million was invested on one side and about $500,000 on the other side, charter schools passed by an overwhelming margin of 51%. Okay? All right? Okay? And so, do I get a choice whether to support that law or not? No. It's a law, it's passed, it's an initiative, and it stayed in place for 3 years before it got challenged. And then even when the Supreme Court said that it was unconstitutional, they didn't say at what date does it take effect, their decision. So I had to enforce the law until that date. So I said we're going to allow kids to stay in school. But I was actually against that initiative, and it wasn't because I was actually against charter schools in itself. If we are going to have charter schools, I believe it has to be constitutional. Okay? That's what I believe. That there's going to be options and choices down the road. And really, this law, it's 40 schools. It's probably going to have a total, 40 schools, it's probably going to have a total of probably 5,000 to 6,000 kids in them. Okay? And it was always thought of as kind of experiment and a different way of doing things, help serve different services. And we have the best law, I believe, so far in the nation. But they have one major flaw in both the initiative that passed, the bill that passed, and now the one that's being challenged, is that our Constitution says that all public schools are on the auspice of and the direction of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. And they made a separate commission, not overseen by any elected person, over here on its own. So to me, it's unconstitutional. So I don't support the law. But the law is in effect right now, so I have to be the person that upholds the law. So that's kind of, you're in those kind of spots, and then you tell people, do you believe it's constitutional? No, I don't. And I've actually worked with the people that have put up the big bucks, and I'm going to have a talk with one of the the richest man in the world in about a month about his law. So it's kind of an interest kind of thing. So that's just kind of tell you about my job. So let me talk about, how many students in the room? Okay, how many non-students in the room? Okay, all right, okay, I got it, all right. Okay, most everybody I think is somewhat connected to education or you wouldn't be here. So this whole thing about McCleary, can I simplify? And I got a handout we're going to email you all that it goes through this, but I just don't want you reading this stuff. So here's what McCleary is about. It's about the Constitution, and it's about every kid having a fair and equal shot. And it shouldn't be about, it's about money. That is a part of it, but that shouldn't be the one thing that people are keying in on. It should be an equity issue, and it should be a civil rights issue. Because I can tell you, there are places in this state today that are giving kids a 21st century education. And there are teachers today that are getting a 21st century wage. But I can also tell you there are schools today that are not giving their kids a 21st century education in the state of Washington. And there are teachers not getting a 21st century wage. And that's not what our Constitution says. The paramount duty of the state of Washington is education of its youth. And it will be amply funded, and it will be a uniform system. So there's 3 words to concentrate on. And the court has gone through it and looked at it and has thought out what it means. Paramount. Now, all you have to do is go to a 5th grade class, okay, to get the definition of paramount. So I'm going to kind of move along. I don't want to test your brains just yet, but you are going to have to answer some questions. Well, what does paramount mean? 5th graders. The most important, the number one thing, the best answer, it's the thing you think about when you get up in the morning, and it's the thing you think about when you go to bed. I think that's a good idea about what paramount is. And what does ample mean? Here's the question I ask kids. They struggle with ample. They're not really sure. Nobody's really sure what ample means. So I give them a choice. Do you want an average allowance, or do you want an ample allowance? Why do they always pick ample? Because they know that being a little above average is better. Ample is better than average. The state of Washington is 42nd in per pupil funding. Per pupil funding, 42nd in the nation. Now, I want you to know it's kind of a West Coast phenomenon because Oregon's like 43rd, California's 45th. But about 30 years ago, California was like 7th, Washington was 17th, Oregon, and we all had some kind of tax measures that slowed down certain taxes. If anybody's from California, Prop 13, people would know what that means, and we have a limit on property tax can go at 1%. But that's in the weeds. So we're back ample. So you got an idea what ample means. And uniform. Does uniform mean exactly? No, probably not. It doesn't mean exactly. But you know, I've gone to schools, public schools that now have uniforms, and there's kids with long pants on, there's kids with shorts on. There's kids with khaki colored pants, there's kids with black pants. There's kids with golf shirts, there's blouses, there's long sleeve, there's blue, there's red. But they have kind of a menu of things, so it does have some variance. So you're going to have some variance. But you're not going to have wide discrepancies of kids knowing for sure, I know who's rich and I know who's poor. That's a big difference. So what the whole thing is about is that we have some districts today, there are teachers, veteran teachers, that have a master's degree and 2 years beyond, that are veteran teachers, that are making $103,000 to be a teacher for 180 days. That's no summertime. That's just doing their job. Okay? And then some people don't believe me when I say that. It's Everett School District. Mukilteo is another district that pays their teachers over $100,000. And this is because they have what they call in their packages is money, time, responsibility, and incentive. But for teaching school, and we'll get to why I have a lawsuit against certain districts. But then there's the Eatonvilles of the world, where I'm from, where I was a high school principal. The state salary schedule says a top paid teacher makes $67,000. And they get an extra $3,000 in their extra package. So they make $70,000. And Eatonville, for a lot of people that don't know where Eatonville is, it's about 25 miles outside Tacoma or Puyallup, okay, up against Mount Rainier. So they don't live out in the sticks. It's suburbia. You drive to your jobs, almost everybody, things like that. So now let's talk about you in this room. So if you go to work in Everett, you start off at $52,000. That's a pretty good 21st century wage out of college, I believe. But if you're in Eatonville, you start off at $39,000. And for the average student who has a loan of $28,000, and some of you are going like that, then it becomes a lot more difficult to live on $37,000 than $52,000, even though a cost of living adjustment. So that's why I say some have a 21st century wage and some don't. And it's because of why. Why are some districts able to pay this extra? And it's a 4-letter word. Levies. Rich districts can raise way more money with their local levies than what we call property poor districts. So I'll give you an example of Eatonville. We don't have many businesses. We have a little town, and then we're surrounded by state and federal lands. State and federal lands aren't taxed. So just that private landowner gets taxed. So you can't raise as much money per thousand value owner. But Everett has lots of business. It has a port. It has lots of things going on. A lot of revenue can be raised. And it's not just on the private homeowner. So they can do that. There's that difference. And so the state, we've allowed this system. And so what McCleary is about, the McClearys are actually from Chimacum, Washington, much like Eatonville. Small community out on the peninsula, property poor district. They can't raise as much money. and they can't pay the salaries. So the McCleary family was part of that lawsuit. Now, when that lawsuit went forward, Mrs. McCleary's son was in 2nd grade. Today, he's a senior at Chimacum High School. And we've yet to make a major dent. Now, why would I be so concerned, and why would I say it's a civil rights issue and an equity issue if it's just all I've talked about is money so far? Well, the one thing that we know that makes a dramatic difference in a kid's education is the quality of teacher. It's not so much about the money, it's about the quality of instructor they have. Were they really skilled? Could they meet the needs of all kids? Could they handle English language learners along with just English learners in their classroom? Could they make the adjustment for special ed kids, mainstream them while having their regular kids along? All those skills that a master teacher has makes a tremendous difference in the learning growth of children in their classroom or young people in their classroom. So what do we find? In the districts that are poor, they seem to have a lot more poor kids, and in general, they have more brown kids in. So teachers come to them, and after 2 or 3 years, they go, gosh, I'm only making $44,000. If I go to this more wealthy school district, I'm going to go from $44,000 to $60,000. I'm going to move there. So this school over here gets another rookie teacher that might not be as skilled as a veteran teacher, and that richer district gets a 3-4 year veteran that moves over here and is very skilled, and they get the pick. You know, the comment would be the pick of the litter, the best and the brightest. And who lives over in the wealthy district? Usually wealthier, white or Asian parents. African Americans don't necessarily live in those. Latinos don't necessarily live in those. Now, I'm overgeneralizing, so if you say, Superintendent Dorn, sit down. I'm just saying, this is the way I talk. To me, you can look it up. It's factual. It's been talked about. That's what the court case is about. And then on top of that, here's the biggest kicker for me is, so we have these levies that people raise over here, but we did something. How many people think technology is a part of basic education? Raise your hand if you think that's part of basic education. Well, I want you to know until about 6 years ago, there was a major debate in the state legislature because it was never mentioned technology. When we talk about basic education, it was never talked about. So it was considered an extra. So you know what the legislature did? They didn't want to become responsible for technology because that would what? Cost money. And you can't just make new money. If you're going to pay for something new, you have to have the money. You might have to raise the money for it. When you say raise the money, in Olympia that means raise taxes, and they didn't want to do that. But the brilliant suggestion was, well, we let districts raise money locally for their levies. Let's let them raise money for local technology levies. Well, who can raise the money? The wealthy districts, right? So the wealthy districts have passed technology levies. So not only is the school connected to technology, and not only the teachers are connected to technology, but we have many districts in the state that are now doing what? One-to-one devices for their students, for the whole school system. From the 5th grade on, one-to-one devices for every kid. And the teachers do their assignments, everything's turned in on the technology, kind of like the university, except at the university, they don't pay for your technology, that's just part of going to school. But in the public system, it's a little harder when you might have one family that can afford the technology and another family that can't. Public schools, remember uniform, and you're trying to make it equal for all? That district is able to raise those funds through a local technology levy so every kid has a device. What if you're a district that can't raise those funds? Think of the gap between the kid that has enough support to pay for it. On their own, they have technology and hooked up. And then the school district that hooks up all their kids, even the poor kids, and then the district down here, those families still, the wealthier families have their kids hooked up to technology, but the poor kids, they're not hooked up to technology, their school's not hooked up totally, their teachers aren't hooked up, their parents aren't hooked up. And so how do you communicate with parents? Very difficult. So that's why I say it becomes a civil rights issue of a level playing field to give all 1.1 million kids a fair chance. I'm stopping right there. I'm going to give you an assignment. If there are questions you would like to ask me, I'm going to stop in 5 minutes and I'm going to turn it over some questions for you. So, you may have read in the paper that this crazy state superintendent, this nutball, is suing local school districts. He's suing Spokane. He's suing Bellevue. He's suing Everett. He's suing Puyallup. He's suing Evergreen. He's suing Tacoma. Well, the reason why I'm suing them is because the legislature's path for local districts and what McCleary said was that local levies are for extras. It's for like 0-hour jazz band. It is for sports teams. It's for field trips. It's for hiring an extra person on staff that the state doesn't pay for to communicate with parents, a parent engagement coordinator. Those are extras. Okay? But what districts today are using 50% of their levy monies for is compensation and basic salaries for teachers. They're using their local levy dollars, it was for extras, paying a state responsibility, which is compensation and salary. And half of your levies are going to that. And in fact, some districts, over 75% of their local levy is paying compensation. So I am suing them for the unconstitutional use of local levy dollars for a state responsibility. And I'm hoping a Superior Court judge, if they rule in our favor, then the legislature will actually have to change our system into a fairer system. And we'll probably have to raise new revenue, code word for taxes. And I want you to know, I'm going to finish this in 2 minutes, that people think I'm crazy because the legislature is not going to raise new taxes. Well, you guys are listening to, you're just not paying a little, if you pay just a little more attention. Do you know that 15 months ago was the largest tax increase in the history of the state of Washington? Can anybody name it? Transportation. Transportation. A year ago in June, the legislature raised $16 billion for transportation. I believe if you're going to do early learning, K-12, and give higher ed a boost, which I think it needs, because you've got a choice coming up this next session. If you think you're going to keep student tuition down, then the state has to put more money in. The problem is the state kept student tuition down and then reduced it, but didn't put more money in and said just cut, which gives you less options. So you're either going to have to raise student tuition or you're going to have to raise new revenue to make it all balance out. But here's the deal. On roads, I was actually at a Kiwanis Club about 2 months ago, and they said, you're never going to raise new revenue. I only want $3 billion for education. Okay, I'm a piker. I'm peanuts. I'm pocket change. They raised $16 billion for roads. But you know what happened? They caught the luckiest break ever. That the price of gas went down. the price of gas did go down, but actually what you're paying in taxes went dramatically up. But it was a lucky break. So in the last 9 years, gas tax went up $24 billion. There was an initiative for $9 billion and then $16 billion a year ago last summer. So in the last 9 years, $16 billion, $9 billion, $25 billion of new revenue for transportation. So I need somebody to tell me, when did roads take the place of kids as paramount duty of the state? Because if you have legislatures telling you, we're going to fund kids first, you go, well, I don't, just ask them. No, it looks to me like it's roads because you voted for transportation. But we can't get a vote on new revenue. And that's what it's going to take is new revenue. So I said I was going to stop at the 6 mark. I'm 20 seconds quick. So who's got a question for me? Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification. You're saying that
Just a second. I got to get over there to be sure I hear.
the point of clarification. You're saying that you're going to be suing those districts because they're using those extra money to pretty much substitute what legislation was not paying.
Correct. That is correct.
So why wouldn't you like solve a problem with the state instead of trying to sue?
Okay.
those districts?
That's what happened 11 years ago. And the state's still saying we're going to get there. So if I can get the court, that doesn't mean, what the court could order is by September 1 of 2018, you no longer can use local levy dollars. That would put the legislature now in, they're kind of getting pushed towards the cliff that they're going to have to do something, but they're able to push back enough. They always have enough room to stay on the cliff. I'm trying to push them over the cliff. It doesn't mean, remember, the local district still gets to have their local levy dollars. The local levy dollars are still coming. They can use it for the extras. They just can't spend it on what the state is responsible for.
Well, how can you sue them if, like, it's not really their problem they're doing? It's not really their issue they're doing it. They're forced to do it because the state is not funding them.
Okay. So if I would, I'll give you a perfect example. If I wouldn't have sued the legislature, would you be asking the question you'd be asking? I'm trying to educate the public of what we're talking about here. It's the inequities. All those districts are the districts basically paying the high salaries. They can take, I'm Eatonville. I should be so tipped off. They should be joining my lawsuit because I live in that community and I know that we lose. We have about 130 teachers in the Eatonville School District. 75% of our teachers do not live in Eatonville. They live in Graham area, Puyallup, and Tacoma, and travel the 25 miles out to Eatonville. After 5 years, they go, you know what? I could make $10,000, $12,000 by not going out to Eatonville and go to this district. Why should that other district have that huge advantage over those other kids? It's an equity issue. I'm trying to solve that issue. And I'm trying to educate people, and I'm trying to force people to understand the issue and make it more fair. The state has to step up and do their share. But there's a lot of people that have said, no, we don't have to deal with it, we're just going to let levies be the same. And that's not what our Constitution is. And that's when I call out on legislators and say, you took an oath of office, paramount, ample, and uniform. You're not fulfilling your oath of office. We'll get to work.
Okay, maybe like 2 more. I'm sorry. So like by trying to, so you're trying to sue the school districts, so state starts acting and raises the board school districts?
Yeah.
Or wouldn't that be unfair?
Okay, let me point out another thing. Okay, remember I said I took an oath of office? Can you guys hear a question?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to be sure because I have a tough time here. So remember I took an oath of office? And in that oath of office it says paramount, ample, and uniform. So I could not do anything. I could not sue them. The court ruled in 77 that you no longer can use local levies for state responsibility. It's for extras. In 77, Duran decision. And just 6 years ago, the court said the same thing. Now, I could choose to uphold the Constitution and what the court said, which I think is my job, to advocate for all kids. Or I could say, you know what, I'm on cruise control. I'm out of here January at 9. You know, why cause all this ruckus? Because that's my job. My job is to advocate not just for the elite kids and the kids, the districts that can raise enough money and give them a 21st century education. It's to advocate for every kid to have an equal shot. And I believe I'm doing it. Now, you can disagree and you think that's the wrong tactic and it's putting a negative light on those schools or those districts. But I want you to know, almost every one of those superintendents that I called up personally and said, I'm going to sue you, they go, Randy, I understand what you're trying to do, but I just wish it wasn't me you're suing. Sue somebody else. So, anyway.
I'm not saying I disagree with your tactic. It's just like, I don't know, things like that, aren't you hurting those beach districts as well in terms of like, now that, I mean, would they use the extra money towards hiring a lawyer and fighting on their behalf instead of fulfilling the duties?
Okay, it's such a small, it's a 50-gallon barrel, and the amount of money you're talking about for them to hire the lawyers and stuff is like an eyedropper. But I'll also tell you this, if I would have been one of those superintendents, I would have joined with Superintendent Dorn and said, he's exactly right, that's exactly what we're doing. It's the only avenue the legislature gave us. They've actually increased our ability to raise local levies. It does make it unfair, but what are we supposed to do? Pay teachers way less and not get quality people in our district? So I think they would have been smarter not to fight it and just join us. But that would have taken a lot of courage.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that you're not running for re-election and you're suing a couple of school districts. Is that a path that it's possible if your successor had a different opinion of you?
Yeah, we have some private funders that are helping us out, so it won't be a problem. It won't be a problem. Go ahead.
What can the superintendent who replaces you do for the legislature? So what's the role the superintendent can play in putting pressure on the legislature, advocating for the public? What do you think, what would words of wisdom be for them?
Okay, so the first thing they can do is just not be me. Okay? I mean, I really believe the legislature and the governor need to see a new face. I mean, people go, well, I've been described as sometimes aggressively toxic, and they say that, Superintendent Dorn has even used the analogy that when he played football at the University of Idaho, I'd much rather been a Cougar, but they didn't think my football prowess was their level, so they didn't have it. Anyway, but I did play in your stadium and stuff, and we almost won the game too, 17-14. But I don't think that'll be the outcome tomorrow. So anyway, but it's true that I have somewhat of a linebacker mentality, not a quarterback mentality. I mean, I don't seek out and hit and destroy. But what I also want people to know, my first 5 years in office, I said, I have confidence in the system. I know the legislative system. It's going to work. They're going to do the right thing. But after 5 years, they kept stalled. They kept playing kick the can. My best line was, when I was 13, I quit playing kick the can. I wish the adults in the legislature would quit playing kick the can. They need to get to be adults. They need to quit playing kick the can, and they're going to have to do it. So the first thing I would say, not be who I am. Work together. Try to work their magic and stuff. Chris Reichdahl's currently a legislator, a good person. Aaron Jones worked for me. Both are good people. But it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard, and I do not believe they're going to do it on their own. And I don't believe the governor is getting it. And I've told him that. If he was standing in the room, I'd point to him and say, you don't get it, you've not worked hard enough. I understand you're a climate guy. That's what you want to do, great. But we have to have educated people to understand what warm climates are.
Do you think that the kind of change that's necessary is possible with Washington's reliance on sales tax?
I think there's going to be an adjustment in our tax system. And I think it's going to have to move to more the progressive side. People immediately go, oh, he's talking about income. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking like the BO&O tax is a set tax. It's not on a business income. So the B&O tax has to, I think, going to have to be adjusted. I think there's 43 states now have a capital gains tax. We had a modest capital gains tax. If you were over 250,000 of a gain, it was going to be 5%. California's is 14%. I don't see businesses going out in droves and individuals moving here yet. There was 20 years ago, but so I think there's going to have to be adjustments done.
How much of this, the disparity in teacher salaries, is economically driven by cost of living, for example?
I would say,
You know,
like,
mean,
when I
you've
give
been
you
tracking
when
the
I
housing market and
okay.
Puget Sound, it's
Okay.
pretty.
You know, when you talk about Seattle and Issaquah and Bellevue, it's driven a lot. But when you talk about Everett being the top, it's not. I mean, Eatonville's cost of home. Most of our homes have a couple acres with it, so the cost of those homes, and they're nice places and stuff. So they're about the same cost. The cost of living of Pierce County and Snohomish County isn't that much different, yet there's some dramatic differences. So it really is where your district is and how much business is in your district. So some of it is driven by cost of living adjustment, and that's why I say it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exactly alike. And I have put forward in my plan that you'll have geographic regions that will negotiate contracts, but you'll have to have it spread, and the state will be responsible for it. You know, obviously Tri-Cities is a little more than to live in and than Connell, you know, but you're going to have to make that. There's going to have to be some regional adjustments. Go ahead. Yeah.
So you were talking about laws, and so with all this guidance and case distinctions that come out from the Department of Justice, as well as from the U.S. Department of Education Office, where it says like the ABA, Title IX, and you mentioned English learners. Where is the money that's going to be have to for new training and for proving that you guys are complying with what they're saying? And how can you, once you have trained people, once you guys are compliant, how can you prove that it's being maintained? And then, so my mom used to work as a CPS, that's why I know a lot of stuff. But anyway, so there's also something called adverse childhood experiences, where people who've been traumatized as children.
Crisis and chaos in a kid's life of trauma.
Not just as children, but also in college. And so, how are schools able to help these students? And are there different types of government grants or opportunities? For example, there's something called CLEAR, which is collaborative learning.
Okay. That's a lot there. That's more than one question. So I'll try to capitalize what you just said so the rest of the audience hear. So I think what our question is, there's a lot of things that teachers have to be trained in. There's a lot of things. There's ELL, and then there's the traumatic part of a kid's life and chaos of life. And then you have special ed kids and what was the other? Title IX, all those things. Okay, here's the deal. First of all, if you take a look at basic education, and what I'm trying to do is make that bigger and fund it at a 21st century level. Also, if the state takes over that responsibility, we want the school year to go from 180 days to probably 185 to 190. So there will be training days inside what the state pays for. So those PD days, we've always said that there should be 10 days of professional development. So you have time, and you can spread out the school year and have that time during the school year to plan with your colleagues and to get the PD that you need for all that specialized training that is coming on board, because we have kids with definitely more needs today than ever before, and that we need to pay that. But I want you to know that when ELL parents come in and they want me to fund ELL, and then I have special ed parents that come in and they want me to fund more for special ed kids. Then they want me, the gifted parents want me to just pay. I go, okay, look, all those are funded off a formula that's off of our special ed base. So if I can raise the base, everybody gets more funding. And so that's why I tell them, they get mad at me. I go, you know what, I just got to tell you this, for the last 3 years I've told everybody, I'm not going to advocate for special ed. I'm not going to advocate for music. I'm not going to advocate for physical education. I'm I'm not going to advocate for ELL kids. I'm not going to advocate for migrant kids. But I am going to advocate for 1.1 million kids that this state steps up and gives an ample funding for all of basic education. And today, we have some getting that ample funding because they're using their local levy. But we have others that are not. So I'm trying to, you haven't asked the question yet. I'm trying to get around the room before I go double.
May I ask a few questions?
You get one, and then after that one, if it's hostile, forget it. I'm not going to let you ask. Go ahead.
So I don't know if you went over this and I just wasn't paying attention, or if it was supposed to be implied, but was your goal to have the cost, or the amount of money put towards each student be the same virtually? Is that like your end goal or one of them?
Okay. The state puts out a per pupil funding that is equal all across the state. Okay. But then the local levy can add to that, and that's where it becomes unfunded. So I'm trying to take that baseline and build it up. Okay.
And then also, supposing you get all the things that you're trying to push for, passed and approved, what would your goals be after that? What would you plan on doing after this?
Okay. Right now, I've already started. One of my goals was to get into better physical shape. One goal, because when you travel around and you do everything, you lose sight of sometimes your own personal health. So I've done that. In the last 6 months, I've lost 38 pounds. Okay, and then I want to get reacquainted with my golf game, and a better golf game, not just my golf game, but a better golf game. I want to see my grandkids a whole lot more than I have. I want to actually, my wife gets to take them to school 2 days a week, and I've only taken them once to school, but one's only been going to school now about a year. And then after that, I just want to take a deep breath, okay? And I'm going to run this out to the last day. I'm going to swing the bat as hard as I can, okay? My job is to make adults feel uncomfortable, okay? That is my job. And there's 147 people that I've tried the last 3. I tried to work with them, and there's a lot of them are my friends. Okay, but they have to fulfill their oath of office too, and I have to hold them responsible. I take my oath of office. I am the #1 advocate for kids in the state of Washington, and I'm going to do that to the very end. And then I'm going to do something that gives me value. I'm going to do something. That's why I went into education, because I get rewarded all the time. I see people, I see parents of kids that I've helped. I see parents of kids that I've kicked out of school, and they say, oh, my son, they come up, Johnny just says you're just the greatest guy. I'm like, I know who your kid is. I thought he hated my guts. But it's given me so much value of that I've helped kids make their lives better. And that parents have been appreciative. And people want somebody that has principles, that has standards, and has high expectations. That's what they want for their kids. Now, they may not like it when you're enforcing them a little bit, but in the end, they'll get it. And I want you to know, when kids got disciplined, I was a high school principal, no VP, I was the guy, okay? And when kids came in, I would always say the same thing. Always, the same line. I go, you know why you're here? Yeah, I'm here to get punished. You're going to kick me out. You're going to put me in school suspension. You're going to keep me out of school. Whatever you're going to do, you're here to punish. Oh, no. We're here to discuss about your decision-making process. That's what we're here for. I go, tell me why you're here. And they'd say something they did in class, like, I was told to be quiet twice, and I kept talking, and I laughed out loud, and then I let an F-bomb slip or something like that. And so I said, so you had a chance to make good decisions and not talk anymore and pay attention, but you chose not to. So your decision making, there's something flawed in your decision. So what I'm here for is to help you, to educate you on how to make better decisions in life. That's what this is about. This isn't about punishment. This is about me helping you to make better decisions and to be educated. And then, if they came down another time and another time, usually they would say, Mr. Dorn, we're not here to talk about that decision and education stuff. Just discipline me and I'm out of here. And I go, you can get out of here when you tell me what I said the last time. And then they would tell me. And the great thing is, I've had a couple people come up to me and say, Mr. Dorn, do you remember what you said to me 20 years ago? I go, oh yeah, it's the same thing I said to everybody. And they go, it's such a great line with my kids today. You know? And I want you to know, that's what it's about, is to helping people, to help teach kids to make better decisions about their lives, so their lives will be better. And that's what I believe education does for people. Whatever the education or training is, it makes your life better for you. And you're learning, you become self-motivated to learn because you understand that the more I learn, the better my life is going to be. So, go ahead.
What figures do you have in mind to make education ample and uniform in Washington State?
Okay. So we have a whole plan. It's actually a couple bills that they actually passed, the legislature. 2261, 2776 are two bills. This is what is a prototypical school model, and this is how it should be funded in the 21st century. And the legislature promised this last year that we're going to get there. We're going to do it. Hopefully they do it. And then my own belief is, do we need an accountability system to kind of measure where the school is? And you got some academic measurements. The answer is yes, we need to do that. We should just do it at what the feds require, and then all the other testing should be dialed down a little bit. Because I know if there's a math teacher in here, I know I may offend you, or an English teacher or something, and the way I probably talk offends English teachers because I sometimes butcher the English language a little bit. But I just want you to know that we all need to be generally educated, but what we also need to know is that we need to be able to solve problems in a general manner. So when we learn something, we need to be able to use it. So when you have math, it's usable math. Math that you're going to use in your lifetime. English that you're going to use in your lifetime. How you present, things like that. How you talk. How to communicate that people understand what you're saying. Those are the things that I think are going to be important. And solving problems is going to be big, and working in groups is going to be big. And getting along with everybody is going to be big. The employers that I know very, very, very rarely let anybody go or fire anybody for not having enough academic ability to do their job or knowledge to do their job. But they let them go for not being on time, for not attending enough, for coming drug or alcohol affected at work, or being intolerable to other people and other people's differences. Those are the reasons I hear that companies have to let people go. And so I have a little 10-step thing. Be here, be on time, be friendly, be polite, be respectful, be prepared. You know, with your toolkit in your mind, never come under the influence of drugs or alcohol or the residue from the night before. I know that would never happen to a student that went to a classroom where you're hungover. No, that doesn't happen. So, I just want people to understand that those soft skills are as important as your academic skills. You as a citizen and a human being, and the way you treat your colleagues and your former workers is just as important as your skill set of academically being able to do your work.
What are your thoughts on making the curriculum for certain subjects the same in public schools, K-12 in the state?
The same?
Yeah.
Well, one thing, the same, yeah, uniform. Okay, so I assume most of you heard the term Common Core. Okay. Some of you have a painful look, some of you have a smile on your face. So what the heck do I think that really is? Forget about anything you've read in the media. Forget about it. So what is it? Here's what it was. In 1992 and 93, in 1990 and 91, there was a belief that the school system had been dumbed down. Okay? And so we wanted President Bush, President Clinton worked on trying to get a set of standards for the nation. And states pushed back and said, education's our job, okay? So Clinton passed legislation and got it so every state had to have a set of standards, 3 through 8th grade, language, arts, and math. And then one test at high school, language, arts, and math. And they added science later on, 4th, and one in elementary school, one in middle school, one in high school. And lo and behold, some states had real high standards, some states had them in the middle, and some states had them down here. And the states that had them way up here, they were some of our best educational systems. But it showed that only like 25% of our kids were meeting academic standards, and another state over here was showing that 70% of their kids met academic standards in the 5th grade. But we knew that Washington kids were learning at a much higher level than that other state's kids, so that wasn't really fair. So there was heat put on states to kind of match some of the standards. There were foundations that showed that Washington standards were really good, Massachusetts standards were really good, and these other standards, and I have a colleague in Kentucky that he would admit that Kentucky's weren't very good. Tennessee's weren't very good. And everybody raised up their standards, and we started moving along pretty good, and we did a pretty doggone good job. Although everybody was teaching different stuff. And I'll get to, this is going to be kind of long, but I'm going to get there. So all of a sudden we get to 2000, and No Child Left Behind passes. And the intent of No Child Left Behind was good. Looking at the gaps between racial students and different minority populations and how they're doing against their peers that are white and stuff, and showing the gaps and showing the discrepancy of money going to one school district and not the other, or going from schools in one district. So what happened is we had these kind of high standards in a lot of states, but as we moved up the mechanism for saying if you had to go every year, it went up about 10%. And once you had to have like 70% of your kids meeting standard, the state of Washington has such high standard that 4 years ago, we only had about 20% of our schools that weren't considered failing in our state. Yet in Tennessee, they had about only 30% of their schools were failing. So Washington had 70% of their schools failing, and Kentucky only had 30% of their schools failing. So how did they do that? Well, from 2000 to 2012, they lowered their standards. They lowered their standards. So Common Core, this is what Common Core was to me. Do you think it's a good idea that 4th graders in Oregon have the same set of expectations in math in 4th grade as 4th graders in Washington? Not, I'm saying, same curriculum. I'm saying same set of expectations. These are the 10 important elements of 4th grade math that kids must master in 4th grade. That makes sense to me because kids move, because their parents get transferred, they get moved because of families split up, they move because of military families, they move for all kinds of different reasons, and then you as a teacher have new kids coming into your classroom and leaving your classroom. We have some schools that 50% of the classroom will change between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. So doesn't that make sense that we would have some kind of same expectations across the nation? So when kids come into 4th grade math, you would know that if they're halfway through the year, they would have covered those 4 most top priorities of math. That's what I think Common Core is. And so that's what I support to make that happen.
We have time for one quick question.
Somebody that hasn't asked one.
Can you tell us more about some other states, how they are dealing with the same problem that you are interested in? So maybe you guys can practice and grow.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that's going to help K-12 education, the best thing that's going to help is way more early learning for kids that come out of poverty. If we get every kid that's in poverty gets 3-year-old and 4-year-old early learning, and they come to school ready to learn, the K-12 system will do a good job. The problem is when kids come to us that haven't had that skill set, that a child from a middle-income family with one parent that's had some education in higher education and training and a high school graduate will come to us with about 1,800 word vocabulary. And a student from a poverty situation, single parent type situation in poverty, they'll come to us with probably only about 1,000 words. And a kid from a double income, both college educated, will come with almost over 3,000 word vocabulary and will have a lot of skill sets. Now that's overgeneralizing. But what we don't do a good job at in K-12 is ever getting that kid caught up. So that would make the biggest difference, is those kids having access to quality early learning programs. I think that's it.
I'll jump in here.
Yep.
If you want to say a last word or two.
No, that's it. I'm
All right.
No.
I
Oh, hell, they're out of here. They got their free meal.
20 seconds. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much, Superintendent Dorn, for reminding and sharing with us that education is everybody's interest.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. You have places to go. Thanks, everyone.